Let's take a quick look at each of the code examples in the SQLPage quick intro. There are 9 code examples here that total 29 lines of code. First example, we are displaying a list component with the text items at the top as the title, and then populating the rows of that list by querying the table named table and selecting values from the column and populating the title of each row using those column values. So you can see here, we've got a list component with the text items at the top, and then each row is text, which is populated from the column values. The next example displays a chart component with this title text at the top, displayed at the top as the title. And for each of the values displayed in the chart, we're going to have 2 values selected, 2 columns selected from the pets table. From the pet column, we'll select a value as and use it as the label. And from the value column, we'll select a value and use it as the value in the chart component. We see that run. You can see text at the top. We have the pets listed along the bottom and their values graphed in a chart. And for the third example, we're going to use a list component again. We're displaying a list with blog set as the title at the top of the list component. And here we're selecting 3 values from a table that's called blog. We're setting the T column value in each row of the list component, displayed in the list component. We're setting that T value as the title displayed in the list component. We're selecting the D column value as the description in the list component, and we're selecting the M column value as the description MD, or the markdown value. So that M column contains markdown, which in this display displays some text, formatted text, and images. So that one line displays this output. You can see here we have 3 rows of values with a title, a date column, and then some markdown. So these images are part of the markdown code. Another row with a title, a date, and then some markdown code, and then a third row and list component displaying those same values. So that one single line displays that entire blog output. Okay, so this example is an interactive UI, and where we have a complete application here. We're going to create a table, and we're going to interact with that table and insert some values into it. So the first line, we're creating a table called things with a single column called items. It stores some text, can't be empty. The second line, we are going to insert values into the things table, into the items column. And what we're inserting is a posted value, a value that's been posted from a form. And we're doing those inserts whenever we get that value submitted and it's not null. So this item value, the thing with the colon in front of it, is a post value that we're reading when the form opens, when the application opens. And that's, in this case, entered using a form component. So this third line displays a form component with the text add item at the top as the title. And within that form, we are selecting just a single field, which we're naming item. This field value, which we're naming item, will have the text item displayed, display a field entry. And when that form is submitted, the page will open back up, and the field which we've named item, the value from that field, can be gotten using a colon in front of the name that we've given to that field entry. So here on this line, we are displaying another list component with the text items at the top, displayed at the top as a title. And we're selecting all the items from that things table. In each row, we are displaying the values in the items column as the title of each row. So here you can see we have a form with the text add item displayed as a title, a single field labeled item. When we enter that value, the form opens and you can see it's been added to the database and displayed in this list component. The next example is a complete CRUD application in 8 lines, which displays values and allows us to edit values in a data table. You can think of this as a data grid. So these 8 lines are what we need to do this full CRUD application. The first line creates a table, and to keep things short here, this example uses some cryptic single letter variables. If you want to have an easier to read application, this is the exact same application using some more readable variables. But to keep things short here, we'll use these single line variables. So the first line creates a table. If it doesn't exist, that table is called T. We're going to have a column labeled I for ID. That's the primary key. And another column named A, which will store some text. This line will insert into that column in the A, or we'll insert into that table in the A column and a value, a posted value, which is labeled A here. Whenever the edit value is null and whenever the A value is null, we'll deal with this edit value down below. This line updates the T table and sets the A column to this submitted as posted A value whenever or for wherever the edit value equals the ID column value and wherever A is not null. This third line deletes from the table wherever this submitted D value, which we'll cover down here, is equal to the ID. So down here, we're going to click some links, and these edit and delete variables will contain IDs. So these lines will update and delete those values when the edit and delete links have been clicked. This line displays a button component, which when clicked will link back to the page, the root page. So basically clears the form so nothing is submitted. And that button will display the text new as its title. This line displays a form component, and that component will display a single field with the A as the name, a single input field. And that that field will be optionally populated by edit values whenever the edit link has been clicked. So it will select from the A column the ID that's submitted when the edit link has been clicked. This set of 2 lines displays a data table or a data grid. So we're displaying a table as a component. 2 of the columns will contain markdown code. One column will not have a header, and the other column will have the header X for delete. And we're setting all of the columns to be sortable when the headers are clicked. And then displayed, all the data displayed in each row of the column will be as follows. The values in each row of this query will be displayed so that in the A column in the table, the value in the A column of the database will be displayed. In a column that has a header labeled I, will display the I values, the IDs. In this header or I'm sorry, in this table column that doesn't have a header, we will display some concatenated markdown code. In Markdown, you can create a link by including the text inside square brackets, and then you can create the URL by including it in parentheses. So the link will link back to the application with the query parameter E set to the ID of the current row that's clicked. So this will present an edit link that opens the app back up with this E parameter set to a row value, an ID value. And then we do a similar thing here. We're going to have in this X column in the visual table, we're going to have a link. The letter X, when clicked, will open the app back up with a D query variable also set to the index number, the I column in that row. So when the user clicks on this, the application will open back up with a query parameter D set to a particular ID, the row that was selected. And then when the application runs, if a value has been submitted, if a D parameter, this is a get parameter when it uses a $sign. When one of those parameters is submitted, the application will delete from the table any ID that equals the submitted ID. So that's a full CRUD application in just 8 lines. We can add new values. So it's very fast. We can sort values by any column. And we can edit values. And we can delete values. Very useful for data management apps of all kinds. And again, you can see the more readable version here with variables that might be a little bit more pleasant to read. And then in addition to doing all the database CRUD work, we can also integrate with web APIs. So this example is going to display a code component, which just nicely formats code. And as the contents of that component, we are going to fetch data from this URL. So there we go. That fetches the JSON from the API that's at this URL. This next application integrates a third-party API with a SQLPage map component. So in 4 lines, we get this. First, we're going to display a form component. That form will display a single field with the name location displayed, and that will be the variable, the name of that submitted variable field. So here we're going to just use coalesce to set a new variable, L, and if a location has been submitted in the form, then L will equal that. Otherwise, it will equal empty string. Then we're going to set a new variable, X, and that is going to be the results of this query. So what we're doing here is we are querying this API. This API is an API which provides latitude and longitude values for a submitted text query. So we can type in something like New York or Eiffel Tower, and it will give us the latitude and longitude. And the way this API works is we have a query parameter named format. We're setting that to JSON. And then we have another query parameter Q, which we're going to set to this concatenated value, which is the URL encoded version of this variable, the submitted location. So again, that X variable will give us some latitude and longitude values for the submitted location. Finally, the application displays a map component. This is a built-in map component that comes with SQLPage. And what we're selecting to include in that component as the latitude and longitude values, we're getting the 0th value, well, the 0th index in that JSON, the return JSON from the API, and we're selecting the latitude key value. We're setting that as the latitude for this map component. And then we're doing the same thing, getting the longitude value from the first item in the JSON and setting that as the longitude value. See this run here. Type in I can't say it, type it New York, and you can see it gets the query values and displays it in a map. So the API is providing latitude and longitude values for anything, any text that I type in here, and then the map component is displaying a marker at those latitude and longitude values. And so that should give a basic idea of how you can integrate the results of API JSON values from an API into your SQLPage applications. We can also deliver database results to a web API endpoint from within SQL applications. So in this application, we are going to display a JSON component. And as its contents, we're going to deliver the JSON, which is created by this set of SQL queries. So we're grouping together some JSON objects. It's going to be a messages key. And within that messages dictionary, we're going to have author and message values in each row. So we see this run, and you can see the API has delivered from the database all of the author and message rows from the messages table. So for each database, you'll use different SQL functions. This is for SQLite. And in the tutorial, we'll cover how to use each of the different SQL functions with each of the supported databases. But in each case, if we want to deliver JSON, we can use this JSON component to deliver at the requested URL. And finally, we've got a Python code example here. It's 3 lines of SQLPage code plus 1 line of Python code. So in the SQLPage app, what we're going to do is display a form component that will have one field. Text will be the name of that field. This is going to be a text area type, so it's not just a single line, but a larger, displayed square that you can type multi-line text into. And when that form is displayed, if a text value has been submitted from this field, it will be displayed as the value. So when the form is submitted, the page is opened again, we see the displayed value. We're going to set a variable W here to be either the submitted text or an empty string if nothing has been submitted. So if the page is just opened in the browser. And then finally, we're going to display a text component. And on that text component, as its contents, we will display this concatenated string. So it will show us the text count with a colon space. And then what will be displayed there is the results of this executed Python script. So we're running the Python interpreter, and we're running with Python, or evaluating the count.py script, and we're passing that the submitted value, this W variable, which is the text that's been submitted. So again, this text component will display count and the results of this count.py script with the text that's been submitted to it. That Python script is this. We're just importing the sys module and then printing the length of the number of words in that submitted text. So whatever gets submitted up here is getting sent to this Python code. The results of that are printed back out and displayed here in this text component. So we see it run, add some lines of code or lines of text, formatted however we want, and the Python script is doing that evaluation. So and gives you a basic idea of how to integrate code from any programming language. Doesn't have to be Python. We could run a different interpreter here, or we could run a compiled program to evaluate any values that are passed to it in this variable. Okay, and in the short video, I did a quick introduction about how to download and run the SQLPage application. A couple things that are useful here. Let's grab the interpreter again, and we'll just cover a little bit that we didn't cover before in terms of how to configure it. So we'll put this here. You can see how quick this is to download. And when we open that up, let's open that here. Oh, and unzip it all. Put it in any folder you want. And by default, there are a couple of things that get displayed. The first thing is the SQLPage executable itself. In Linux or in Mac, that'll be SQLPage.bin. And then this folder, the SQLPage folder, contains, most importantly, a SQLPage.json configuration file. And here we can configure the database type and the connection string. So by default, SQLPage uses a SQLite database, but you configure it also for SQL Server, for MySQL, for Postgres, and other compatible databases like MariaDB. So let's do this. Take a quick look at a configuration file. I'm going to bring us back down now to this quick start tutorial. This is the recommended tutorial if you want to learn more about how to build apps and you've done any SQL coding or any other work in software development. Grab the quick start. It's about 80 pages total. It's fast-paced and we'll get you doing things quickly right from the very beginning. The tutorial for absolute beginners is made for people that really don't have any prior web development experience or software development experience. It's got a lot of screenshots and a lot more description. But if you've got any background working with code, click the quick start and you can see here the first thing comes up after some example applications is the link to the releases package. Unzip it, all the instructions you see here, and there's a quick little demonstration JSON file. So in this file, if we were to take these contents and pop them in that JSON file, we could connect to a SQL Server database using this user and this password at this domain and using this database. Now you can also set the port we want to listen on port 808, and we can set the web root to be any folder where we want to save our .SQL scripts. This is actually the configuration file used to display all of these examples you're seeing in the quick start. So you'll see they run on port 808 and they're in a folder on the server, which on the server is running Linux at a very inexpensive VPS host. And they're in the folder that's convenient to work with there. If you want to see other settings, just click this link. And this has all of the other settings that you can use to configure SQLPage. You can do that within the JSON file, and you can also set these variables, these configuration settings in environment variables. So all that is written out down here. It's really useful to help configure SQLPage. And there's a video here that explains how to set up and configure SQLPage on Linux VPS. Covers a little bit about how to use tmux and basically goes through the entire setup sort of the way we've done here, but on a inexpensive VPS server over over a SSL connection, or I'm sorry, SSH connection. So you're working at the command line of the VPS. So that should be more than enough to help you get started working with SQLPage. The other examples down here cover the same sorts of features, but with some more depth. So this context example, I think the main feature to see here is that it's basically like the 8-line example, 8-line CRUD example, but you can see here this displays right now 2,000 lines of data, and it's very fast. I'll reload this again. That's done. And you can also edit. You can see how quickly it's doing this. If you want to make a change, submit it, and that is done. It's that quick. And if we want to delete, you can see everything's been refreshed there. Do an edit here again. Change this to a 2. And this is fast. It's manageable, displaying up to about 10,000 rows. And the code for this one is very similar to the 8-line example. Let's take a look at that. Similar to the 8-line example, we create a table, just have some more fields here. We basically have more of everything. We make some inserts into the data, into the table, into these particular fields. We make some updates whenever the edit link is clicked. Follows the same structure as that 8-line example. It's just a little bit more complex. We do some deletes when the delete link has been clicked. We populate the results of a form. We just have more form fields. And we have a new button that again refreshes the page. And then we have a table again with just some more columns. So just an expanded version of the 8-line example you saw earlier. The context example is a more feature-packed version. You can see at the top, we've got some pagination. You can jump around. We have a server-based filter. You can see how quick this is. These are actually server-based results. So let's that. You can see how quickly. Let's try this again. Do a 222 here. So we get some results. And then on the page, we have a search function also. So you can see how quick this works. Blammo, blammo. And get a filtered output. Let's do this. Anything that has 2 2s, you can see now we've got several pages of results. And if we want to search within that page, you can see how quickly that works. SQLPage is very fast. It doesn't use Ajax. It's just a traditional server, web server, but it is so quick that you really don't need Ajax for these examples. It's just very simple and very fast. Key benefit in working with SQLPage is that you can populate UIs, web UIs with the results of SQL queries, and you can also populate API endpoints with the results of API queries. And additionally, you can read third-party APIs. So this takes the place of many of the most complicated parts of web frameworks and makes it very, very simple to build powerful web apps. This application integrates an API call and some of the CRUD features you've seen so far. So a lot of the same sorts of code that you've seen in the past. Let's just fill this in, enter it. So now it saves a place, and we can make a list, which is now saved. I don't know where that's going to be, but we'll just, so you can see here. Let's go to that. Goes to a place on the map, and we can remove those locations, so forth, so on. The code for that, once you've seen some of these other CRUD and API examples that are simple, should be fairly straightforward. You can see here we're creating a table. We're doing some deletes and inserts. We have a table that's displayed And we are running an API or running a, I should say, a component that displays those map locations. So this example, the weather example, integrates a little bit more of a complex request body. So we're calling a weather API. It displays the wind speed and the temperature for that zip code. And the point of this example is to show you how to interact with a little bit more robust request body. I use an API that needs more request body. So we're putting together all these values, zip code, API key. And you can also see we've got a way to use environment variables, so you don't have to include API keys and sensitive information in your code. And we've got some handling of JSON down here. This animated webcam list is just an example of a custom animated component. So this animated component displays some images and some text drawn from a database. And you can see that using that custom animated component is extremely simple. We just display the component with a title, and on that component, we're setting the title and or using the title and description and URL column values from the webcams table. So using that component is extremely simple in SQLPage. That component is created just with some CSS to animate and display the image, position the image and animate it. And it uses the handlebars notation. This is all built into SQLPage so that we can fill out values in the component just by including them in curly brackets. So the tutorial covers all about how to do that. This iframe example just demonstrates how you can integrate applications written in other web technologies. So this first example is written in Bootstrap and plain.js and has bottle on the back end, Python bottle. This uses Python in the browser, and a Flask backend. This example is a nice GUI example, so a 3D example. This is a Streamlit example, all integrated very nicely into this SQLPage layout. This is my homepage, compute.com with a dash, com-pute.com. And that's written in Anvil. It's a pretty heavy framework, but really easy to insert into this application. And the point of all this is just to show you how simple it is to integrate some of these other frameworks and tools that you or colleagues might want to collaborate on in building applications. So this application uses some jQuery and Bootstrap and Flask on the back end. And I'll say sort of the point of this is to be able to integrate entire other applications. And an example of doing that and how you can do that is we'll take that message API that you saw earlier. So this little bit of source code. That API is delivered by SQLPage code. And then this example here is an app written with Bootstrap and using the fetch API. So something totally separate from SQLPage. And this application is just calling that API. It's requesting information from that API. It's not written at all in SQLPage. But so, for example, if you have a developer on staff or you work with who wants to work with Bootstrap and Fetch API, they can do that. Here's the code. Of course, it's much more verbose than SQLPage code, but a really common set of tools. So it includes Bootstrap and a table in Bootstrap, and then it fetches values from this message API that we have running and displays them in that table. And then this last example is another SQLPage app. And what it does is it displays a card on the screen with some text, and then it displays that application, which is requesting information from the same SQLPage app, or the same SQLPage server, to display information in the Bootstrap table. So you can see how easy that is to display that application in a SQLPage app. So that enables easy collaboration with developers who want to use other tools. So hopefully those examples give you some idea. I think the point here is that anyone can learn how to use 21 lines of code. In those 21 lines of code, you see a really good variety of useful UI examples, including a table example of full CRUD. You see some examples about how to integrate third-party API endpoints and how to deliver endpoints that other tools can request from, and also how to integrate code in another programming language. And that programming language could be really anything in this code, could be anything that you can include in a file and the value sent to it. Can be anything that you can query with SQL. So the real value of this whole framework is the fact that you're basically only writing SQL code. The SQLPage framework eliminates all of the other typically complex layers, another programming language, typically an ORM, and all of the other ecosystem tools that are typically used in a framework, and eliminates all that stuff. It performs extremely quickly, and it's simple to use. A single file without dependencies, install it, and you can just add these UI components or API endpoint components to build full apps. And the components that you can create are extensible using any development tooling that you like, any web development tooling that you'd like. Bootstrap and Tabular, which is sort of a beefed up Bootstrap, along with icons and all sorts of other components built in. That's built into the SQLPage framework, but you can use any other frameworks any other web development frameworks that you're comfortable with to extend. And then you can also simply build applications that interact with your SQLPage APIs and then include them in iframes. So that provides a really robust set of tools that are very, very simple to use. Learn these examples, and then or experiment with those examples. And when you want to really learn how to do everything, all of these examples here are included in the quick start. Go there, and this will walk you through exactly how to do all that and much more. You can see how to compile. I've got SQLPage running on Android in Termux, on old 32-bit Windows machines. And since SQLPage is written in Rust, you can compile for just about any well-known platform. There's a lot here about how to build custom UI components and how to host and so on. So take a look there. If you'd like to hire me for any sort of commercial development, or if you want tutoring, you can hire me by writing me at this email. It's nick@compute.com. It's go to -com-pute.com, com-pute.com.